we recognize that AI is dramatically shifting the landscape for technologists and frankly for business. And if you think about big changes in careers over the last few years, I'm going to steal something that the CEO of Dice will often say, which is there's been a few big things that have happened, in terms of shifts in technology. One was the internet. That was a big thing. The second was mobile phones and the sort of the smartphone revolution. There's another one that I've forgotten, but I'll come back to in a second.
Social media or something, probably
social media. Yeah. And then AI. Sure. I think AI is one of those big shifts. Oh, the cloud. There we go.
Oh, the cloud. Yeah.
The cloud. Yeah. And then AI, big shift. So I think underestimating what this is going to mean is probably a little foolish. I think it's a good opportunity to start to sort of lean in and understand it. So to help you all, we have written an ebook that covers AI in tech. And till we kind of scroll down a little bit, it's a sort of interactive book that talks about kind of what the future of AI is and why it's important for the future of work, not just tech work, but I think just business in general.
Yeah.
And then we've broken it up into bunch of sections, demystifying AI job trends. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Really getting into some of the buzzwords that are happening in there and looking in a bit more detail about you hear a lot of noise about AI jobs. Do the numbers match what we're actually seeing on the site? And then a deep dive into top 5 AI roles. So here are the key points we're going to cover. First of all, AI isn't that new. It's been something which has been evolving for a very long time. In fact, if you look back in the history, what we start talking about is that AI was actually started, the foundations of some of the AI was started in 1959.
Yep.
Which is a long time ago.
Yeah, it is.
So I did some research. So I'm like, that seems like the computers probably were pretty bad in 1959 compared with where they are now. So I typed in 1959 computer into the internet, and this is what popped up. Do you want to see? Not a picture of a 1959 computer, a picture of an ashtray that was given to a group of scientists that came together to talk about computers in 1959.
Those are kind of like a pretty common gift back then. You didn't, it's not something you see nowadays, but ashtrays were everywhere, right?
Very common in 1959.
Always were smoking a cigarette, you'd have to put
packet
your
of cigarettes and an ashtray made of lead.
That's
right. Yeah. It's probably not only was the ashtray bad for your health, the substance that it was probably made of, it's probably got lead paint on it too as well. So, but I mean, it's been a while since I've been given an ashtray as a gift.
Yeah, it's been a while for sure.
That's it. That's all I got on this one.
That's all. Okay, that's all you got.
Yeah, just the ashtray.
The only thing I have to add is that there's not any new like math fundamentals that have really come out since then. Generally, all the math that underlies a lot of this stuff, there's nothing new that's been added to that. So this was a couple years ago. There's a big discussion around that of like how far can some of the stuff that's based on these algorithms advance when the essentially the fundamental math hasn't changed. I mean, it's before all the ChatGPT stuff came out, so I guess pretty far. But yeah, so a lot of the math and algorithms that go into the things that we're using today, that was, again, those are laws or however you want to define them, right? It's not really like made up, I guess. But a lot of those were kind of put into practice and documented back then. And we're still using those today. Yeah,
there's been obviously in many disciplines, there's been a lot of people who have who imagine a future which is beyond the technical capabilities of what's available at the time. And therefore things start to catch up. Right. So the fundamental principles still remain. Now, the question then, Dave, is if you want to become an sort of part of this, do you have to be really good at math, or are there other things that you can do to participate?
You don't, though it is helpful, depending on what you're doing, to be good at math. I'd say more maybe statistics is something that you want to brush up on, which is like math adjacent type stuff. But no, you don't have to be an expert in math to do some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think the article starts to lean towards the fact that one while hard technical skills are still definitely a discipline that's required in lots of areas, again, we've talked about this before, but brushing up your soft skills starts to become something which is important.
Yeah.
Because you, and as we've talked about, engineers and technologists have been problem solvers. That's part of what everybody does every day. But the ability to accelerate the way that you think and offer solutions to problems starts to sort of be supported by some of the tools that's in there. So your role now is to not only be able to understand what the core of a business problem or a problem that you're solving is, use the tools at your disposal, but actually we're back into the world where you have to start to be able to explain what you're doing and how things work to people that may not have the background and sort of understanding that technology people do, and that's a real skill for sure. Some of this also, and it's addressed a little bit in the next segment, is that AI is something, and I discovered this over the weekend, AI is something where, as with all tools, the tool is produced and then it doesn't have a sense of what's right or wrong.
Right.
It's the humans that use it that have to start to put the guidelines in there. So ethical use of AI is something that pops up. And I discovered through a link that got sent to me, just quite how fast musical AI creation has come in the last 6 months. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, I've about 6 months ago, I started seeing a lot of that music AI stuff pop up, and I think a lot of copyright has prevented that from progressing too far, because what I saw, if somebody could do it in unrestricted, you could basically just feed your favorite music into there and it'll more or less create something you want to listen to.
Variants,
now, in terms of voices, like if you like more vocal music, that's I think where it probably still going to struggle right now. Though, if you put in terms of auto generating something, if you put a little elbow grease in and you're like, here's the words I want you to sing in this person's voice, I think you might, then again, that's work on your side. I'm saying more just auto generate. But if you're into more electronic music, I think, eventually you'll just log on. I don't know when Spotify will get it figured out, but you'll just log on and press a button and, they were talking about take this song and just extend it. Like, here's a song that I like, and go ahead and make it 10 minutes instead of 5 minutes, right? And it would just extend it out. It was pretty interesting.
Interesting.
So,
yeah, the platform that I played with over the weekend did auto-generate lyrics or take the lyrics. And on first blush, I was pretty impressed by it. But of course, as soon as you start picking under the covers just a tad, you find that people have written all sorts of songs. And mainly it seemed to be that they were drinking too much when they put the words in. And then the lyrics that come out the other end are what you'd expect from drunk people, given the power to produce whatever they wanted to. The one song I did find that I hadn't considered, but now, of course, I will think about all the time, was someone had asked for a West End musical themed around June. So just to enhance the sand and worm experience that we've talked about before on the stream here, now we have music available to us. Yeah. It's excellent. All right. Anything else on here that we should talk about a little bit? So let's just walk through the key points here. So AI's been around for a while. I think it's something which is continuing to go. We talked a little bit about there's going to be a lot of value in the shift to soft skills over the course. And then I think that there's this concern that AI is going to replace everyone's jobs. I think where the position that the paper's taking here is AI is not replacing jobs, but shifting the way that you think about how to do the work that you're doing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think I'd say if the current AI replaces your job, it probably wasn't too long before it was replaced by something else. You know what I'm saying? Like you were maybe replaceable by some other business, some other automation or offshoring or reshoring or whatever you want to say. So, because it's if you play with it for long enough, like you said, same thing with the UDO. If you play for it a little while, you realize there's some rough edges here. Like ChatGPT really struggles with logic problems. I'd argue you might need to know how to do basic logic to do most jobs nowadays, regardless of the job. Just name a job, right? You kind of need to have some logic, and it struggles with those types of things. Again, those are solvable problems, but so the way I think about it right now is, a really helpful tool for enhancing your current job. So an example that I like to use is it's a helpful research assistant, right? So, and for writers, or even if you're writing an email, right? I'm like, oh, I got to start this email from scratch. How am I gonna? What are all the things? I'll just say, write me an email to this group of people on this subject. I won't just copy and paste it because it has no idea who the people I'm going to talk to are, or all the nuances of the business and stuff. But it gives you a nice like starting point and template, and also it's just like a research assistant, kind of gives you like, don't forget about these things. You're like, oh right, I forgot, I want to make sure I cover that point or something like that. So I think those are at least in the more what do we want to say, like knowledge worker space, that tends to be where it can help you out thinking of those types of things.
And there's a question here, how do you see large AI companies navigating copyright laws moving forward? It's a good question. I think the biggest area where there's a lot of probably jeopardy for some of the AI models is image creation. Because the core of image creation is that you feed millions and millions of images in, you're going to end up tripping over kind of what you'd consider the fine line between copying and inspired by is. I do, though, think that the core of what we're seeing on LLMs in particular is that a lot of the real powerful usage isn't actually about broader IP in the space. It's actually about using your own data against the technology to be able to find it. So, for example, inside DHI, which is the company we work for that manages DICE, we run a weekly all hands meeting, and there's a lot of content in there that is hard to navigate. You're not going to click through every single one and watch all the recordings, but as all that text gets injected into an LLM, you'll be able to ask a question, hey, what holidays are there this year, or what's our policy on this, or what's blah, 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 and it can interpret and bring them stuff back way easier than it ever has been before. So
I think there's some downsides too, is that the internet there's the argument of like the public internet versus the private, and there's a lot more stuff behind, corporate firewalls and things like your own, the wiki for your company or something like that may not be public necessarily.
Yes.
And so again, excluding those types of things, though, the internet's generally had a lot of content that's free or ad supported, right? But the problem is that up until once ChatGPT 3, 4, whenever it was released, then everybody realized that they were giving away that content for free. And then now what you're going to start seeing is stuff like Reddit did, which was basically, okay, all our APIs are off. You have to pay, right? Because scraping, there's limitations in scraping. They can detect you doing that. So you can't scrape anymore. You can't use the API. You have to pay. And so I think you're going to see a lot of more paywall type stuff thrown up, which is unfortunate. Maybe for the casual user, it won't be that interruptive, right? You can still browse Reddit for free. But Reddit went and made some deal with a AI company, right? To give them all the data on there for training or stuff like that. I think one other thing that we're going to start seeing, and I'm not sure how this is going to work out, but have you heard the term low background steel? So
no.
So before the first atomic bomb was dropped, obviously we had a lot of steel production. But once it was dropped, then all steel in the world that's above the ocean essentially was contaminated with like low amounts of radiation and all the nuclear testing and all that. So you can't use those for certain sensitive pieces of equipment like Geiger counters or even more sensitive than that. So what they do is they dive on World War II sunken wrecks and they pull all the steel because the water prevents the radiation from coming through. So or older wrecks, whatever, and they pull the steel off of that, and that's what they use for some of these sensitive instruments. And so it's like, well, eventually you're going to run out of that. Same thing with AI. There's essentially the training data sets that were not generated by AI that you sat down and generated all Chat GPT-4 on, but now AI is generating a lot of the content on the internet. So now you're training it on content itself or someone's other model generated. And so what it will also be interesting when we talk about copyright is like, oh, this is my little, like, this is pre-Chat GPT data that I have, right, for training. Otherwise, it's just contaminated with AI and for AI trained data or generated, right? So
the ability to generate synthetic data and then reinforce the models is something where we're going to have to wrestle with that a little bit in the future for sure. Because you've seen that even now. It's pretty interesting. When you said low background steel, I didn't think about steel as in like
Oh, like stealing?
I thought you meant stealing content.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what I, where
that's
I went
okay.
to. But
That's
now
fair.
it's good. That's a good description.
Yeah,
So we'll come back to diving down to get things from the ocean a little later in the stream. So hold that thought just for a second. And then I think the last couple of things here on the things are the importance of upskilling. So, as everyone that's been in technology for a while knows, at some point you have to take a big, deep breath and change what you do. It may be working, you may be comfortable with it, but things move on. It's like when the new iPhone comes out and you're like, oh, I just don't want to move because things have moved. But
nobody wanted to switch from BlackBerry to iPhone.
You have to do it. There's things that you need to let go and move on. So that's a constant part of this, including upskilling, because there's new ways to do things. And I think you've got to be prepared to take a little bit of pain in the short term to get the experience to do it. Sometimes it doesn't work. Over the weekend, I was trying to figure out. I knew I was trying to get a list of all the dates for all the US-based Grand Prix in which doesn't seem that hard, right? And I know I could go onto Formula1.com and look at it and write it down. I don't want to do that. So I went to ChatGPT, wouldn't tell me the ones for this year, only last year. Went to Gemini and asked it, and it basically told me there was one Grand Prix in the US,
which
Austin.
is wrong.
I'm like, what? That's all wrong. So I wasted more time there. Than I actually got back.
Yeah, so those are like simple problems that you're like, look, you can write me a very complex email about this subject, right? Or tell me summarize the bullet points of how to do enterprise, shipping strategies or something like, package shipping strategies, but it struggles to tell you what the 2 upcoming Formula 1 Grand Prix are for the United States. So there you go.
That's right. And then the last topic here is role of humans in AI. And there's a couple things here. One is we talked a little bit about it's up to all of us to make sure that there are ethical constraints around these tools because they are very powerful. There's a comment here around artists are starting to put their own terms of services on their work so they can't get ingested into training models. And I do believe even with what you're going to take is you're going to take the lowest forms of creation out the bottom, and you will continue to see artists producing new work that isn't AI generated for sure, right? Because human beings are very creative like that. I don't think that's too much of an issue. I do have a more serious topic though to talk about, which is I followed my own train of thought through here, which is, okay, if human beings are responsible for generating AI and we're responsible for its behavior, is there going to be a kill switch for AI? Is there one big button somewhere? Or are we going to make sure the computers have red cables and we can pull them out to power down the computers if we need to?
Well, the AI is going to think about that and probably have like backups or something, right?
Yeah, so that's exactly where I went, which is exactly where I ended up with the plot of The Matrix, which is I think we decided to blanket the sun. Is that right? To kill the computers?
Was that like a Dyson sphere or something? Oh, no, it's just to blanket the sun. Okay.
Yeah, and then the computers turn humans into batteries. Yeah. That's the gist of The Matrix, I think. Someone can check this. But my question is if AI is so clever, why would it pick humans as batteries? Because then it had to create a whole world for them to live in. Yeah. Just use hamsters.
Cows or hamsters,
Exactly.
That was a lot of hamsters, though.
But they're way less hassle, aren't they?
Yeah, that's true.
So I think the future of AI continuing to live is not human batteries, it's hamster batteries.
Okay.